By 2 p.m. that Friday afternoon, I'd be sitting in First National Bank transferring $247,000 from the college savings accounts I'd been secretly funding for 15 years. Money that would have paid for both of my grandchildren's complete university educations, all because my son Michael had just told me I was becoming a financial burden he couldn't afford to support, never knowing that I'd been the one quietly ensuring his children's educational future while living on half my actual income to build their nest egg. Before we dive into this incredible story of family assumptions and the $250,000 mistake my son made by underestimating his broke mother, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment telling me about your own family financial drama, and subscribe, because you're going to want to see what happens when someone calls their parent a burden while that parent is secretly funding their children's entire future. My name is Dorothy Chen. I'm 72 years old, and this story begins 18 months ago when I made the decision to live modestly and keep my true financial situation private while testing whether my son valued family loyalty or viewed elderly parents as expensive obligations, AI test that would reveal his character and cost him more than he earned in 5 years of his accounting career. But to understand how I ended up withdrawing my grandchildren's college fund after being called a financial burden by the son I'd quietly supported for decades, you need to know who I was before retirement changed my apparent circumstances, and before my son's assumptions about elderly parents led him to make the most costly mistake of his relationship with his mother. For 41 years, I was Dorothy Chen, Senior Financial Advisor at Midwest Investment Partners, one of Illinois' most respected wealth management firms serving the Chicago metropolitan area and surrounding counties. I didn't just help clients plan for retirement or manage their savings accounts. I specialized in complex financial strategies that preserved and grew generational wealth for families worth millions of dollars. My role at Midwest Investment Partners required managing portfolios totaling over $150 million in client assets across 200 active accounts, ranging from young professionals starting their first investment accounts to multi-generational families requiring sophisticated estate planning, tax optimization strategies, and wealth preservation techniques that most financial advisors never encounter in their entire careers. I held securities licenses for investment advisory services, insurance planning, and estate planning coordination that required annual continuing education in federal tax law, investment regulations, and fiduciary responsibility standards. My expertise wasn't just theoretical knowledge from certification programs. I had hands-on experience navigating market crashes that destroyed other advisors' client portfolios while protecting and growing wealth for families who trusted me with their financial futures. The 2008 financial crisis, which devastated retirement accounts across the country and destroyed the savings of millions of Americans, actually enhanced my professional reputation because my conservative investment strategies and diversification approaches protected my clients from catastrophic losses while positioning them for recovery growth that outpaced market averages over the following decade. My specialization within Midwest Investment Partners focused on education funding strategies, helping parents and grandparents create systematic savings plans that would cover rapidly rising college costs while maintaining family financial stability and tax efficiency. I developed 529 education savings programs, Coverdell education accounts, and trust fund strategies that maximized educational funding while providing flexibility for changing family circumstances and educational goals. During my career, I helped over 400 families fund their children's and grandchildren's college educations, creating savings strategies that eliminated student loan debt for thousands of young adults and provided educational opportunities that wouldn't have been possible without professional financial planning and systematic investment approaches. My client base included everyone from middle-class families earning $75,000 annually who needed efficient college savings plans to wealthy families worth $50 million who required complex trust structures and estate planning coordination. I understood how to create educational funding strategies for any income level while optimizing tax advantages and investment growth that would meet long-term educational goals. But more importantly, my career provided the financial expertise and investment returns that allowed me to build substantial personal wealth while raising my son Michael as a single mother after my husband James died in a tragic car accident when Michael was only 12 years old. James's death in March 1995 wasn't just an emotional catastrophe. It was a financial crisis that required immediate strategic planning to ensure Michael's stability, educational opportunities, and emotional security during the most challenging period of his adolescent development. James had been earning $52,000 annually as a high school principal and athletic director, and his sudden death reduced our household income by over 60%, while simultaneously creating new expenses for grief counseling, increased childcare costs, and the practical challenges of single parenthood. The life insurance settlement of $150,000 seemed substantial in 1995, but it represented our entire financial safety net for Michael's remaining childhood years and my long-term security as a single parent working in a demanding professional career. Every decision about that money would determine whether Michael could attend college without crushing student loan debt, and whether I would have adequate retirement savings after supporting him through his educational years and early adult development. 2. 38 years old, suddenly widowed and working 60-hour weeks in a high-pressure financial services career, while raising a grieving 12-year-old who had lost his father during the most formative years of his social and academic development, I faced choices that would shape both of our futures for decades to come. My professional financial advisor training taught me that emotional decisions during family crises often create long-term financial problems that compound over time. So, I approached James's life insurance settlement with the same systematic analysis and strategic planning that I used for my most important client portfolios. First, I used $75,000 to pay off our mortgage completely, eliminating our largest monthly expense and ensuring that Michael would always have stable housing, regardless of economic changes, job market fluctuations, or unexpected expenses that might arise during his teenage years and college preparation. Owning our modest 3-bedroom ranch house outright reduced our monthly living expenses from $1,450 to $945, covering property taxes, utilities, basic maintenance costs, and homeowners insurance. This financial breathing room was crucial because my salary of $48,000 annually had to cover everything else: groceries, clothing, healthcare co-payments, transportation costs, school supplies, Michael's extracurricular activities, and the countless expenses associated with raising an active teenager who needed emotional support, academic resources, and social opportunities that would help him process his grief while maintaining normal adolescent development. The remaining $75,000 from James's life insurance became the foundation for 2 separate investment accounts that I managed with the same professional expertise I provided to my wealthiest clients. I allocated $45,000 to Michael's college fund, invested in a diversified portfolio of mutual funds and index investments that would grow over 6 years before he needed the money for university expenses. The final $30,000 became the starting point for my retirement savings acceleration, invested in tax-advantaged accounts that would supplement my employer's pension plan and provide long-term financial security during my later years. I was determined that James's death would not prevent me from building the kind of wealth that would ensure my independence and allow me to support Michael's family if needed during my retirement years. But financial planning was only part of managing our family crisis. Michael was dealing with typical teenage challenges, complicated by profound grief, anger about his father's premature death, and confusion about family financial changes that he was too young to fully understand, but old enough to worry about. Constantly. He needed professional counseling to process his loss, consistent emotional support from a mother who was also grieving while trying to maintain professional competence, and the kind of stability that helps adolescents develop healthy coping mechanisms for trauma while maintaining academic performance and social relationships. My position at Midwest Investment Partners provided excellent health insurance that covered Michael's medical needs and psychological counseling, but more importantly, it gave me access to financial planning expertise that most single parents couldn't afford during family crises. Your father wanted you to have every educational opportunity possible, I told Michael when explaining our college planning strategy during one of many conversations about our family's financial future. We're going to invest his insurance money very carefully so it grows enough to cover your university costs without limiting your choices or burdening you with student loans that would affect your career decisions. My investment strategy for Michael's college fund was aggressive, but carefully diversified, using my professional knowledge to maximize growth potential while managing risk through asset allocation and systematic rebalancing. I treated his education fund like a high-priority client account, monitoring performance quarterly and adjusting strategies based on market conditions and time horizon considerations. By Michael's sophomore year in high school, his college fund had grown to $68,000, and by graduation in 2001, it totaled $94,000, enough to cover 4 years at the University of Illinois with minimal student loan requirements. My systematic investment approach and professional financial expertise had transformed James's life insurance settlement into educational security that gave Michael freedom to choose his academic path based on intellectual interests rather than financial limitations. During Michael's high school years, I also began accelerating my own retirement savings and investment growth, taking advantage of market opportunities and maximum contribution limits to build wealth that would provide comfortable retirement income while preserving principal for potential family emergencies or inheritance planning. My annual income at Midwest Investment Partners had grown to $72,000 by 2000, and I was contributing the maximum allowable amounts to tax-advantaged retirement accounts while maintaining additional investment portfolios that would provide flexibility and liquidity during my later years. Michael graduated from the University of Illinois in 2005 with a bachelor's degree in accounting and only $8,000 in student loans, remarkably low debt that allowed him to accept entry-level positions based on career development potential rather than immediate salary requirements. He was intelligent, professionally capable, and well-prepared for building the successful accounting career that James and I had always envisioned for our son. Mom, I know you sacrificed a lot to make college possible without crushing debt. Michael told me during his graduation celebration dinner at a nice restaurant in Champaign. I promise I'll build the kind of career that makes your investment worthwhile and allows me to provide for my own family the same way you provided for me during the hardest time of our lives. I was proud of Michael's academic achievement and optimistic about his career prospects, but more importantly, I was satisfied that I had successfully navigated single parenthood while building financial security that would benefit both of us for decades to come. After Michael's graduation, I continued working at Midwest Investment Partners for another 12 years, gradually advancing to senior partner status and seeing my annual income reach $135,000 by the time I retired in 2017 at age 65. My retirement planning had been methodical and highly successful, maximizing contributions to tax-advantaged accounts, maintaining diversified investment portfolios, and building wealth that would provide comfortable retirement income without requiring any dependence on family support. During my final decade of employment, I focused intensively on wealth accumulation and retirement preparation, taking advantage of catch-up contribution limits for workers over 50, and positioning my investment portfolios for the transition from growth focus to income generation that would support my retirement lifestyle. My expertise in financial planning allowed me to optimize tax strategies, coordinate Social Security timing for maximum benefits, and structure my retirement accounts for efficient distribution that would minimize tax liabilities while providing steady income throughout my expected lifespan. When I retired in December 2017, my financial situation was more secure than most people could imagine. My investment accounts totaled $1.1 million, including $650,000 in tax-advantaged retirement accounts and $450,000 in taxable investment portfolios. that provided flexibility for early retirement distributions and emergency funding. My pension from Midwest Investment Partners provided $3,400 monthly starting at age 65, and Social Security benefits added another $2,100 monthly when I began collecting at full retirement age. Combined with my paid-off house worth $220,000 in the appreciating Chicago suburban market, I had both substantial assets and reliable income streams that supported comfortable retirement without touching principal investment amounts. My total monthly retirement income of $5,500 easily covered all living expenses, including property taxes, utilities, groceries, healthcare premiums, transportation costs, and discretionary spending for travel, hobbies, and family gifts. I was financially independent and secure, with resources that would last throughout my lifetime while providing substantial inheritance for Michael's family. But most importantly, I had 41 years of professional financial expertise that allowed me to create sophisticated strategies for building generational wealth, knowledge that would soon benefit my grandchildren in ways that Michael never suspected and couldn't have imagined when he began making assumptions about my financial capacity and family value. When Michael married Jennifer Walsh in September 2008, I was genuinely happy about his choice of life partner and optimistic about their future together. Jennifer was a registered nurse working at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, earning $68,000 annually, and together they had combined household income of $145,000 that supported a comfortable middle-class lifestyle in their suburban Chicago community. Michael had progressed steadily in his accounting career, advancing from entry-level staff accountant to senior accountant, and eventually to supervisor positions that came with increased responsibilities and salary growth that reflected his professional competence and work ethic. When they purchased their first home in Palatine, a nice 4-bedroom colonial in a good school district, I was proud of their financial responsibility and pleased that they were building equity and establishing roots in a community that would provide stability for their future family. Their children arrived right on schedule with their family planning goals. Emma was born in April 2010, followed by David in September 2012. Both children were healthy, intelligent, and clearly destined for the kind of educational opportunities that would require substantial financial investment over the next 2 decades. As I watched my grandchildren grow and develop, I began implementing a sophisticated long-term education funding strategy that would ensure both Emma and David could attend the finest universities in the country without any financial limitations or student loan burdens that might affect their career choices or life opportunities. But I kept this college funding strategy completely secret from Michael and Jennifer, allowing them to believe they were responsible for planning and saving for their children's educational expenses, while I quietly ensured that financial constraints would never limit Emma and David's academic potential or university choices. The college fund strategy I developed for my grandchildren was both sophisticated and systematic, designed to provide complete educational funding while remaining completely invisible to Michael and Jennifer's household budgeting and financial planning discussions. I opened separate 529 education savings accounts for both Emma and David within 6 months of their births, starting with initial deposits of $10,000 each that I transferred from my retirement investment accounts. These funds were invested in age-appropriate portfolios that prioritized growth during their early years and would gradually shift toward capital preservation as they approached college age. Beginning when Emma turned 1-year-old, I established systematic monthly contributions of $750 to each child's education account, $500 total monthly that represented approximately 27% of my retirement income. Over 17 years for Emma and 15 years for David, these contributions would grow to substantial educational funds that could cover tuition, room and board, and expenses at the most prestigious universities in the country. My financial planning expertise allowed me to optimize investment allocations within the 529 accounts, using professional-grade asset allocation strategies that maximized growth potential while managing risk through diversification across domestic and international markets, growth and value investments, and large-cap and mid-cap holdings. The accounts were structured to take full advantage of tax benefits available through 529 plans, allowing investment growth to compound tax-free while providing tax-deductible contributions under Illinois state tax law that reduced my annual tax liabilities while building my grandchildren's educational resources. But I kept the entire college fund operation completely secret from Michael and Jennifer, allowing them to worry about education costs and develop their own college savings plans while I quietly ensured that Emma and David would have educational opportunities that exceeded anything their parents could provide through their middle-class household income. By Emma's 13th birthday in 2023, her education account had grown to $187,000, while David's account at age 11 contained $142,000. Combined, the education funds totaled $329,000 and were on track to exceed $400,000 by the time Emma reached college age, providing resources that would cover complete educational expenses at elite universities while leaving substantial funds for graduate school or professional development. More importantly, I wanted to observe whether Michael would treat his aging mother as a valuable family member deserving care and respect, or whether he would view me as a potential financial burden when he assumed I had limited resources and might need family support during health crises or economic emergencies. During my retirement years from 2017 to 2024, I maintained a carefully modest lifestyle that concealed my true financial capacity while observing Michael's attitudes toward elderly parents and family financial responsibilities that might arise as I aged and potentially required assistance. I continued living in my paid-off house, drove a reliable but 10-year-old Honda Civic, shopped at discount stores and used coupons for groceries, and avoided expensive purchases or lifestyle upgrades that would reveal my substantial retirement income and investment assets to family members who might make assumptions about my wealth. To Michael and Jennifer, I appeared to be a typical retiree living on modest fixed income, someone who was financially stable and independent but not wealthy, self-sufficient but potentially vulnerable to unexpected healthcare costs or economic changes that could create family financial obligations in the future. Mom seems to be managing her retirement income pretty well, Michael would tell Jennifer when they discussed my financial situation during family gatherings. She's got her house paid off and her pension and Social Security, so she doesn't seem to need help with anything major right now. Michael's assessment wasn't entirely wrong about my apparent financial stability, but what he didn't understand was that I was living on less than half my actual income while building his children's college funds and maintaining investment growth that would provide generational wealth for his family if he proved worthy of such substantial financial support. The test I was conducting wasn't about Michael's financial capability to support me if I needed assistance. It was about his willingness to provide emotional support, regular family contact, and genuine care for his mother, regardless of her apparent financial capacity to compensate him for his attention and time. This dynamic would be tested dramatically when I experienced health challenges that created apparent vulnerability and gave Michael the opportunity to demonstrate whether he valued family loyalty or viewed elderly parents as expensive inconveniences when they couldn't provide immediate benefits or financial advantages in return for care and attention. The stage was being set for Michael to make critical assumptions about my financial situation and family value that would ultimately cost him access to $329,000 in educational funding for his children, a catastrophic mistake based on his fundamental misunderstanding of elderly parents who appear financially modest but are actually controlling substantial resources that could transform his family's future for generations to come. Looking back now with the painful clarity that comes from devastating family betrayal, I can see that Michael's character flaws weren't sudden developments that emerged during his adult years when he began viewing elderly parents as potential financial obligations. They were consistent patterns that had been evident since childhood, but that I had consistently rationalized, minimized, or attributed to normal developmental phases rather than recognizing them as fundamental personality traits that would define his approach to family relationships and responsibilities throughout his life. Michael had always been what his teachers diplomatically described as academically capable but emotionally detached. From elementary school through college, he demonstrated intellectual ability and social competence that made him successful in structured environments like school and work, but he consistently struggled with genuine empathy, sustained concern for others, and follow-through on commitments that didn't provide immediate personal benefits or recognition for his efforts. During his elementary years at Lincoln Elementary School in our suburban Chicago community, Michael excelled in subjects that showcased his analytical abilities and earned individual recognition. Mathematics competitions, where his quick problem-solving skills gave him advantages over classmates. Science fair projects, where his systematic approach and presentation abilities impressed judges and teachers, and academic contests where his natural intelligence allowed him to outperform peers without requiring significant collaborative effort or team coordination. But he would consistently avoid activities that required patience with slower learners, sustained emotional investment in group outcomes, or sacrifice of his personal academic goals to help classmates who might benefit from his knowledge and capabilities. Group projects became exercises in either completely dominating the work to ensure he received the recognition and grades he wanted, or contributing absolute minimum effort if he determined that his teammates weren't capable of helping him achieve his individual academic objectives. Michael is exceptionally bright and has tremendous academic potential. His fourth-grade teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, wrote in a parent-teacher conference report that I still remember word for word because it captured something troubling about his approach to relationships and responsibilities that would persist throughout his development. However, he seems to have significant difficulty understanding how his actions affect other people and rarely volunteers to help classmates who are struggling with concepts he has already mastered with ease. When I discussed this feedback with Michael, hoping to help him understand the importance of kindness, community cooperation, and using his abilities to benefit others rather than just himself, his response revealed the calculating, self-centered thinking that would characterize his approach to family relationships throughout his adult life. "Mom, why should I slow down my own learning to help kids who can't keep up with the lessons?" he asked with genuine puzzlement, as if concern for others was an unreasonable expectation that interfered with logical academic planning. "If I spend too much time helping them understand things I already know, I might fall behind in my own work or miss opportunities to learn more advanced concepts." At 9 years old, Michael was already developing sophisticated justifications for selfishness that made his unwillingness to help others sound like rational academic strategy, rather than recognizing that his lack of empathy reflected fundamental character issues that would affect his relationships throughout his life. "Michael, part of being a good person and a valuable community member is caring about others and helping when we have the ability to make a difference," I explained, hoping to instill values of compassion, mutual support, and social responsibility that his father James had always emphasized during family discussions about character and values. "But Mom, Dad also taught me that I should work hard and focus on achieving my potential rather than getting distracted by other people's problems," Michael replied, selectively using James's memory to justify behavior that James would have found disappointing and concerning. "I think Dad would want me to concentrate on my own success, rather than spending time on activities that don't help me reach my goals." This pattern of selectively remembering lessons that supported his preferred behavior while completely ignoring values that would require him to sacrifice his convenience or comfort for others would become a hallmark of Michael's character development throughout his childhood and into his professional and family relationships as an adult. During 5th grade, the concerning pattern intensified when Michael's teacher, Mr. Patterson, specifically requested a parent conference to discuss Michael's approach to peer relationships and group cooperation that had become disruptive to classroom dynamics and worrying from a social development perspective that extended beyond academic performance. "Michael is clearly one of the brightest students I've taught in my 22 years of elementary education," Mr. Patterson explained during our meeting in his classroom after school hours, "but he seems to view his classmates as obstacles to his success rather than as potential friends, collaborators, or community members who deserve basic respect and consideration." "What specific behaviors are you observing that concern you?" I asked, feeling defensive about criticism of Michael's academic focus while also genuinely worried about reports of social difficulties that could affect his long-term emotional development and relationship-building capabilities. Yesterday, during a group social studies project about Native American cultures, Michael told his 4 teammates that they were too slow and too stupid to contribute meaningfully to the research and presentation, Mr. Patterson explained with obvious professional concern about classroom dynamics and student emotional well-being. He then completed the entire project himself, including sections that were specifically assigned to other students, and presented it as his individual work rather than acknowledging any team collaboration or shared effort. When I explained that group projects are designed to teach collaboration skills, mutual respect, and shared responsibility, and that excluding his teammates defeated the entire educational purpose of the assignment, Michael's response was that he didn't care about their feelings or learning experiences as long as he received the grade he deserved for his individual academic effort and knowledge demonstration. This incident should have been a major warning sign that Michael was developing seriously concerning attitudes about relationships, mutual responsibility, and basic respect for others that required immediate attention and character development, intervention. But instead of recognizing it as a fundamental character issue that needed sustained correction and guidance, I chose to interpret his behavior as the natural result of being intellectually gifted in an educational system that didn't always provide appropriate challenges or recognition for academically advanced students. He's just very driven and competitive about academic achievement, I explained to Mr. Patterson, unconsciously making excuses for behavior that was clearly problematic and hurtful to other children. Michael has always been focused on excellence and high performance. Maybe he just needs to be around other students who can match his intellectual level and academic standards. Mrs. Chen, the concerning issue isn't Michael's intelligence, academic drive, or desire for excellence, Mr. Patterson replied gently but firmly, trying to help me understand that I was missing the real problem. The issue is his complete lack of concern for how his actions affect other people and his willingness to hurt others emotionally and socially to achieve his personal academic goals. These are character problems that go far beyond academic placement or intellectual stimulation. Michael needs to learn that real success requires collaboration, empathy, and the ability to work effectively with people who have different strengths and capabilities. He continued with the patience of an experienced educator who had seen similar patterns before. If he doesn't develop these social and emotional skills now, he'll struggle with teamwork, leadership, and meaningful relationships throughout his professional and personal life, regardless of how intelligent or academically successful he becomes. This conversation should have prompted serious reflection about Michael's character development and immediate intervention to address his troubling attitudes about relationships, mutual respect, and social responsibility. But I was still dealing with the emotional and practical challenges of single parenthood following James's death, and I found it easier to focus on Michael's academic achievements rather than confronting difficult behavioral issues that would require sustained attention, consistent correction, and potentially uncomfortable family conversations about values and character. He'll learn to work better with others when he's in more challenging academic environments with peers who can keep up with his intellectual capabilities, I rationalized to myself, convincing myself that Michael's selfishness and lack of empathy were temporary phases that would resolve naturally as he matured and found more appropriate academic and social peer groups. The pattern continued and actually became more pronounced during middle school at Roosevelt Middle School, where Michael's academic abilities earned him placement in advanced courses and gifted programs that provided intellectual challenges, but also created new opportunities for him to demonstrate his unwillingness to support others or prioritize group success over individual recognition and personal advancement. In 7th grade, Michael joined the school's academic decathlon team, which should have been an excellent opportunity for him to learn teamwork, mutual support, and collaborative problem-solving while pursuing intellectual challenges that matched his academic capabilities and competitive interests. But his approach to team participation revealed the growing depth of his self-centered thinking and his fundamental inability to understand that group success required individual sacrifice, mutual encouragement, and genuine investment in teammates' improvement and confidence building. Michael is incredibly knowledgeable and performs excellently during individual competition segments. His academic decathlon coach, Ms. Foster, explained during a parent meeting that she had requested to discuss team dynamics and Michael's impact on overall group performance. But he consistently undermines team cohesion and group morale by refusing to help struggling team members improve their performance and by openly expressing frustration and contempt for teammates who don't match his academic level or preparation standards. "What specific examples can you give me?" I asked, hoping the issues were minor personality conflicts that could be resolved through better communication strategies or role adjustments within the team structure. During practice sessions, Michael will answer questions quickly and correctly, demonstrating his knowledge and preparation, Ms. Foster explained with the diplomatic tone that educators use when discussing difficult student behaviors with parents. But when teammates struggle with similar questions or need additional explanation to understand concepts, he'll make comments like, "This is completely obvious," or "How do you not know something this basic?" rather than offering assistance, encouragement, or constructive guidance. His behavior makes other students feel stupid, inadequate, and unwelcome on the team, which destroys group morale and actually hurts our overall competitive performance, she continued. Academic decathlon is as much about team confidence and mutual support as it is about individual knowledge, and Michael's attitude creates an environment where teammates become afraid to participate or ask questions. More concerning from a character development perspective, when I've directly asked Michael to help tutor struggling teammates or provide additional explanation for concepts they're having difficulty with, he's refused, saying that their poor performance isn't his responsibility, and that he shouldn't have to sacrifice his own preparation time to help people who aren't smart enough to be on the team anyway. This feedback revealed that Michael's selfishness and lack of empathy were becoming more calculated and deliberate as he got older, rather than improving through natural maturation, social learning, or moral development. He was actively choosing to prioritize his individual recognition over team achievement and was willing to hurt others emotionally and socially to maintain his sense of superiority and personal advancement. When I discussed this behavior with Michael, hoping to help him understand basic principles of teamwork, mutual support, and using his abilities to benefit others rather than just himself, his response demonstrated that he had developed increasingly sophisticated justifications for his selfishness and unwillingness to invest in other people's success or well-being. "Mom, I joined academic decathlon to challenge myself intellectually and compete at a high level," he explained with the kind of logical, reasonable tone that made his selfishness sound like responsible goal-setting and strategic thinking. "If other kids can't handle the academic requirements or keep up with the preparation standards, that's not my fault, and it's definitely not my responsibility to fix their problems or compensate for their limitations." "But Michael, part of being on a team is helping your teammates succeed and supporting group performance," I replied, trying to help him understand fundamental principles of collaboration, mutual responsibility, and community building. "Your individual success and the team's overall success are connected, and everyone benefits when team members help each other improve." "But Mom, if I spend my limited time teaching other people things they should already know or helping them reach basic competency levels, I won't have adequate time to prepare properly for my own competition categories," he argued with convincing logic that made his selfishness sound like efficient time management. "That could hurt my individual scores, damage my academic reputation, and reduce my chances for academic recognition and scholarship opportunities that could affect my entire future. Besides," he added, revealing the full depth of his calculating, self-centered thinking, "if these kids can't handle academic decathlon requirements without constant tutoring and hand-holding, maybe they shouldn't be on the team in the first place. The team would be stronger and more competitive with better students who don't need remedial help to meet basic performance standards." Michael was 13 years old and already demonstrating the kind of ruthless cost-benefit analysis approach to relationships that would characterize his treatment of family members throughout his adult life. He viewed other people as either useful for achieving his goals or as obstacles to be avoided, rather than understanding that relationships required mutual care, support, and investment regardless of immediate personal benefit or strategic advantage. The most troubling aspect of this pattern was that Michael's selfishness and lack of empathy were often rewarded in academic and social contexts that prioritized individual achievement over character development, moral growth, or community building. His high test scores, academic awards, debate victories, and articulate presentation skills earned praise from teachers, admiration from peers, and recognition from school administrators, while his unwillingness to support others was often overlooked, excused, or even implicitly encouraged as competitive drive and academic focus. During 8th and 9th grades, Michael's academic success continued to mask his character deficiencies and provide external validation for his self-centered approach to relationships and responsibilities. He earned straight A's, won regional mathematics competitions, received recognition for his debate skills and public speaking abilities, and was accepted into advanced placement courses that enhanced his high school academic preparation and college admission prospects. But his approach to family responsibilities during this period revealed the concerning patterns that would eventually define his treatment of me during my later years, when he believed I was financially vulnerable and potentially dependent on his support, attention, and care. When James's mother, Michael's beloved grandmother Eleanor, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease during Michael's freshman year of high school, our family faced the first major crisis that would test Michael's willingness to sacrifice his personal convenience and academic priorities to support family members during difficult times that required sustained emotional investment and practical assistance. Grandmother Eleanor had been a central figure in Michael's life since his father's death, providing emotional support, homework help, and the kind of consistent grandparent presence that helps children process grief while maintaining stability and family connection. She had attended his school events, celebrated his academic achievements, and provided the kind of unconditional love and encouragement that grandparents uniquely offer to developing adolescents. But Michael's response to Eleanor's Alzheimer's diagnosis revealed his fundamental inability to prioritize family needs over personal comfort, academic convenience, and social activities that he valued more than family responsibility and emotional support for vulnerable relatives. Michael, Grandma Eleanor is going through a really difficult time with her memory problems, and she needs more family support and regular visits, I explained during a family meeting after Eleanor's neurologist confirmed her Alzheimer's diagnosis, and discussed care recommendations. That means all of us need to spend more time with her, help with daily activities she's having trouble managing, and provide emotional support while she adjusts to her condition. Michael's immediate response was revealing and deeply troubling. How long is Grandma's condition going to last? Because I have some really important academic competitions and college preparation activities this semester that I can't afford to miss or perform poorly in because of family obligations. Michael, your grandmother has Alzheimer's disease, I said, shocked by his focus on academic convenience rather than family crisis and emotional support for someone who had been central to his emotional development. We don't know exactly how her condition will progress, but family needs to come first during this difficult transition period. I understand that Grandma is sick, he replied with the careful, diplomatic tone that indicated he was saying what he thought I wanted to hear rather than expressing genuine concern or emotional investment. But I also can't let her illness interfere with my academic goals or college preparation timeline. That wouldn't be good for anyone in the long run, including Grandma. Eleanor, who was sitting right there during this conversation despite her increasing confusion and memory difficulties, looked hurt, but unfortunately not surprised by Michael's response. Sweetheart, I'm not asking you to sacrifice your education or your future opportunities, she said quietly, her voice already showing the uncertainty that came with her developing cognitive impairment. "I'm just hoping you'll visit more often and maybe help your mother with some of the extra responsibilities that my condition is creating for our family." "Of course I'll help when I can," Michael agreed readily, using the kind of vague commitment that sounded helpful while providing maximum flexibility to avoid actual responsibility. "But I need to make sure that family obligations don't interfere with my academic priorities or my preparation for college admission requirements and scholarship applications." What became clear over the following months was that Michael's definition of helping when I can meant helping only when it was completely convenient for his schedule and didn't require him to sacrifice anything he actually wanted to do or any activities that provided personal benefit or advancement opportunities. When Eleanor needed transportation to medical appointments because her memory problems made driving unsafe, Michael was consistently unavailable due to academic obligations, extracurricular activities, or social commitments that he presented as non-negotiable and more important than family medical needs. "I have debate team practice this afternoon," he would say when asked to provide transportation or accompany Eleanor to neurologist appointments. "Coach said missing practice could affect my chances for state competition, and that's really important for my college application portfolio and academic scholarship opportunities. I have a study group for AP Calculus today," he would explain when Eleanor needed help with household tasks that had become difficult due to her cognitive decline. "These study sessions are crucial for my grade point average and standardized test preparation, and I can't afford to fall behind in my college preparation because of family responsibilities. I promised Sarah I'd help her with her chemistry lab report," he would offer when I asked him to spend time with Eleanor, who was feeling increasingly isolated and confused as her condition progressed. "She's counting on me, and I can't let her down when she needs academic support." The irony was obvious and painful. Michael was always available to help friends, classmates, and teachers with their academic projects, college applications, and social activities, but never seemed to have time to help his own grandmother during a devastating illness that required family support and emotional presence. He had learned to present himself as helpful, caring, and community-minded to the outside world, while reserving his most selfish and uncaring behavior for family members who loved him unconditionally and had supported him throughout his entire life. When Eleanor's condition worsened during Michael's junior year of high school, and she needed more intensive daily assistance with basic activities like medication management, meal preparation, and safety supervision, Michael's absence from family caregiving became even more pronounced and obviously deliberate. Instead of recognizing that his grandmother was experiencing cognitive decline that required family presence and emotional support during her most vulnerable period, Michael seemed to increase his involvement in extracurricular activities, social commitments, and academic projects that kept him away from home and family responsibilities. "Michael, Grandma Eleanor is really struggling with daily activities and needs more family presence and assistance," I said during one of many conversations where I tried to help him understand the gravity of Eleanor's situation and our family's responsibility to provide care during her illness. "She gets confused about her medications, forgets to eat regular meals, and sometimes doesn't recognize familiar surroundings or remember basic safety procedures. She needs family members around who can provide guidance, companionship, and practical assistance with tasks that have become difficult for her." "I do care about Grandma," Michael replied with what seemed like genuine confusion about family expectations. "But I don't see how me sitting around the house being sad about her condition is going to help her get better or improve her quality of life. I think Grandma would want me to keep focusing on my academic success and future goals rather than getting depressed about her illness." "It's not about sitting around being sad," I explained with increasing frustration about his inability to understand basic family responsibility and emotional support. "It's about being present and available when she needs companionship, assistance, or just the comfort of having family members nearby. It's about showing her that she's important to you and that her well-being matters more than your extracurricular activities. But Mom, these academic activities are important for my college applications and scholarship opportunities. Michael protested with the same logical tone that made his selfishness sound like responsible planning and strategic thinking. Grandma always told me that education should be my top priority, and that I should work hard to achieve success. I'm just following the values she taught me throughout my childhood. Michael had developed a sophisticated ability to reframe his selfishness as virtue, presenting his unwillingness to sacrifice for family as evidence that he was following family values about education, achievement, and personal responsibility. He could make his absence during crisis sound like dedication to principles, rather than acknowledging that he simply didn't want to deal with the emotional demands and practical inconveniences of caring for an ill family member. When Eleanor's condition required her to move into a memory care facility during Michael's senior year of high school, his response was notably detached and focused on practical considerations rather than emotional support for a family member who was losing her independence and familiar surroundings. While I was dealing with the heartbreak of placing Eleanor in institutional care and struggling to manage the emotional and financial stress of her illness while maintaining my career and supporting Michael's final year of high school, Michael seemed primarily concerned about how Eleanor's care costs and family stress might affect his college application timeline and graduation activities. "I know this is a difficult time for everyone," he said, during the process of transitioning Eleanor to the memory care facility, "but I need to make sure that Grandma's situation doesn't negatively impact my college applications or scholarship." Interviews. "I've been working toward early admission deadlines, and I can't afford to let family stress affect my academic performance or college preparation now." "Michael, your grandmother is losing her independence and moving to institutional care," I said, hardly able to believe we were having this conversation during one of the most painful periods of our family's life. "College applications can be adjusted or postponed if necessary while we handle this family crisis and make sure Eleanor receives the care and support she needs." "But Mom, college application deadlines are completely non-negotiable," he replied, with the kind of logical, urgent tone that made his selfishness sound reasonable and necessary. "Early admission opportunities only come once, and any delays could affect my chances for admission and scholarship funding that will determine my entire academic and career future." Besides, he added, revealing his ability to use family members' illnesses for personal advantage, "Grandma's Alzheimer's diagnosis might actually help my college application essays if I write about how caring for a family member with dementia taught me about perseverance, family responsibility, and overcoming challenges." Eleanor had indeed taught Michael about family responsibility and overcoming challenges. But the lessons he had actually learned were how to avoid caregiving duties while extracting useful narratives from family crises for personal advancement and academic benefit. The college application essay Michael eventually wrote was emotionally manipulative and factually misleading, presenting him as someone who had learned profound lessons about family loyalty, personal sacrifice, and compassionate caregiving through his grandmother's illness. But the reality was that Michael had learned to observe other people's struggles without participating in them, and to extract useful stories from family difficulties without actually providing support during those difficulties. The essay helped Michael gain admission to the University of Illinois with partial scholarship support, and I was proud of his academic achievement, even while recognizing that his success had been built on avoiding, rather than embracing, the family responsibilities that Eleanor's illness had created for our household. During Michael's college years, he maintained minimal contact with me unless he needed something specific: financial support for expenses not covered by his scholarship and college fund, career advice for internship applications, professional networking connections through my financial services contacts, or practical assistance with housing, transportation, or academic planning that required adult expertise or resources. Our conversations during this period were pleasant but superficial, focused primarily on his academic achievements, social activities, career planning, and future goals, rather than building deeper emotional connections, expressing genuine interest in my life and well-being, or maintaining meaningful family relationships. That went beyond transactional exchanges. "How are your accounting courses going this semester?" I would ask during our monthly phone calls. "Really well," he would reply with enthusiasm about his academic progress and career prospects. "I'm maintaining a 3.9 GPA, and I've been selected for a competitive internship program with Ernst & Young that could lead to excellent job opportunities and professional connections after graduation." That's wonderful news. "How are you feeling about Grandma Eleanor's condition? I know her memory problems have been getting worse." "Oh, that situation. I'm handling it fine," he would respond with obvious discomfort about emotional topics and family health issues. "I've learned to focus on positive memories and practical planning rather than dwelling on sad situations that I can't control." Speaking of practical planning, I wanted to ask if you could put me in touch with your contact at First Chicago Bank. I'm applying for their summer internship program, and a personal recommendation would really strengthen my application. Michael had developed an impressive ability to redirect conversations away from emotional topics, family relationships, and genuine personal connection toward practical matters where I could provide tangible benefits for his career development, academic advancement, or personal goals. He never directly refused to discuss feelings, family relationships, or emotional support, but he consistently steered our interactions toward areas where he could gain something useful while avoiding topics that would require him to provide emotional investment, family care, or genuine concern for others' well-being. This pattern continued after Michael's graduation in 2005, when he moved back to the Chicago area and began building his accounting career while maintaining geographic proximity to family, but emotional distance that allowed him to appear connected while avoiding meaningful involvement in family life and responsibilities. Michael's career development was steady and professionally successful, progressing from entry-level staff accountant to senior accountant and eventually supervisory positions over a period of 10 years, with salary increases that supported a comfortable middle-class lifestyle after his marriage to Jennifer in 2008 and the birth of their children Emma in 2010 and David in 2012. But throughout this period, Michael's approach to our family relationship remained consistently superficial and self-serving. He would visit when it was convenient for his schedule, include me in family celebrations that enhanced his image as a caring son and family man, and maintain contact that met social expectations without requiring genuine emotional investment or sacrifice of his personal priorities and comfort. The pattern I had observed during Eleanor's illness, where Michael was always available to help others but rarely available to help family, continued during my retirement years. Michael would enthusiastically participate in community volunteer activities, assist neighbors with home improvement projects, help colleagues with professional development, and maintain business relationships that enhanced his career prospects and social reputation, but he rarely initiated contact with me or showed genuine interest in my daily life beyond basic health and safety concerns. "Michael is such a helpful community member," Jennifer would mention during our occasional conversations. "He volunteers with the Youth Basketball League and helps organize the neighborhood block parties. He's really good at community involvement and leadership activities. He's very committed to professional development too," she would add. "He mentors junior accountants at his firm and participates in continuing education programs that keep him current with industry changes and career advancement opportunities." I was pleased that Michael was building a reputation as a helpful professional and engaged community member, but I was also puzzled by his willingness to provide substantial time and effort to neighbors, colleagues, and community organizations while maintaining such limited involvement with me, despite our family relationship and geographic proximity. The explanation became clear during conversations where Michael would describe his community involvement and professional activities as networking, reputation building, and career development that enhanced his professional image and created social connections that could benefit his advancement opportunities and family social status in their suburban community. It's important to be known as a reliable, helpful person in your professional and social circles, he would explain when I asked about his various volunteer commitments and community activities. People remember when you provide assistance and support, and those relationships create opportunities for business referrals, career advancement, and social connections that benefit the entire family. Michael had learned to provide assistance strategically, focusing on relationships that enhanced his professional reputation or could provide future benefits for his career and social standing, while minimizing investment in family relationships that he viewed as established, permanent, and requiring minimal maintenance to preserve. This calculating approach to relationships, evaluating the costs and benefits of time investment, and focusing energy on connections that provided maximum return on his effort, would ultimately define his response to my aging and his assumptions about my financial situation during the period when I was secretly funding his children's college education while appearing to live on modest retirement income. The stage was being set for Michael to make the most costly miscalculation of his life, based on assumptions about my financial vulnerability and family value, that would prove to be catastrophically wrong when he needed to choose between his convenience and my well-being during a health crisis that would reveal his true character and cost him access to educational resources for his children that exceeded his wildest imagination. His decision to prioritize his comfort over family responsibility would cost him more money than he would earn in a decade of his accounting career, all because he failed to understand that the mother he was planning to view as a financial burden was actually the source of his children's educational security and future opportunities. In September 2023, 14 months after I had begun living modestly to test Michael's character while secretly building his children's college funds, I experienced the health crisis that would create the vulnerability Michael needed to reveal his true priorities and make the assumptions about my financial situation that would ultimately cost him access to educational resources worth more than his annual salary for the next 5 years. The crisis began subtly with what I initially dismissed as typical aging concerns: occasional shortness of breath during my usual morning walks around the neighborhood, mild chest discomfort that I attributed to stress or indigestion, and episodes of fatigue during routine activities like grocery shopping or household maintenance that I had always managed easily throughout my retirement years. At 71 years old, I had been fortunate to maintain excellent health throughout my later years. My annual medical checkups consistently showed normal blood pressure, healthy cholesterol levels, strong bone density, and the kind of overall cardiovascular condition that my cardiologist, Dr. Amanda Morrison, described as remarkable for your age and lifestyle. I took minimal medications, just a daily multivitamin, calcium supplement, and occasional ibuprofen for minor aches and pains associated with gardening and household activities. My active retirement lifestyle included daily 45-minute walks through my tree-lined suburban neighborhood, regular gardening that kept me physically engaged and provided fresh vegetables for healthy meals, weekly grocery shopping and errands that maintained my independence, and participation in community activities like the local investment club and library volunteer programs that provided both social interaction and intellectual stimulation. I felt capable, energetic, and optimistic about maintaining my health, independence, and active lifestyle throughout my later years. My financial planning had included comprehensive healthcare coverage through Medicare supplementation and long-term care insurance that would protect my assets while ensuring access to quality medical care if health issues arose. But during late August 2023, I began experiencing symptoms that were subtle enough to rationalize individually, but concerning when considered together as potential indicators of developing cardiovascular problems that required medical evaluation and possibly significant lifestyle changes or treatment interventions. The shortness of breath episodes occurred primarily during physical activities that had never been challenging: climbing the stairs to my second-floor bedroom, carrying groceries from the car to the house, or working in my garden for more than 30 minutes at a time. Initially, I attributed these episodes to seasonal allergies, changes in humidity, or normal age-related decreases in stamina that required gradual adjustments to my activity levels. The chest discomfort was more concerning because it occurred unpredictably during both physical activity and rest periods. Sometimes I would feel a tight, pressing sensation in my chest while walking, but other times the discomfort would appear while I was reading quietly or watching television in the evening. The episodes lasted anywhere from a few minutes to nearly an hour, and they were often accompanied by mild nausea and sweating that made me feel weak and unsteady. Most troubling were the fatigue episodes that began affecting activities I had always enjoyed and managed independently. My weekly grocery shopping trips, which had been pleasant social outings that allowed me to maintain community connections while managing household needs, began feeling exhausting and overwhelming after just 30 minutes in the store. Gardening. Work that typically energized me and provided satisfaction throughout the growing season became tiring after just 15 or 20 minutes of weeding, planting, or harvesting. I would find myself needing to sit down frequently and take extended breaks between tasks that had previously been easy and enjoyable. Everyone experiences these kinds of changes as they get older, I told myself when these symptoms occurred. It's probably just the normal aging process, and maybe some seasonal stress that will improve once I adjust my expectations and activity levels appropriately. But by early September, the symptoms had increased in frequency and intensity to the point where I could no longer dismiss them as normal aging or attribute them to temporary stress, seasonal changes, or minor lifestyle factors that would resolve naturally over time. The shortness of breath was occurring during minimal activities like walking from my bedroom to the kitchen or carrying a basket of laundry from the washing machine to the folding area. The chest discomfort episodes were happening almost daily and were severe enough to make me stop whatever I was doing and sit down until they passed. Most concerning, I was experiencing episodes of dizziness and lightheadedness that affected my confidence about driving, household safety, and maintaining the independent lifestyle that had been central to my retirement planning and personal identity as a capable, self-sufficient adult. During the second week of September, I experienced a frightening episode that forced me to acknowledge that I needed immediate medical evaluation and possibly assistance with daily living activities that I had always managed completely independently. Had driven to Jewel Osco for my weekly grocery shopping, a routine trip that I'd been making to the same store for over 15 years. But after loading groceries into my car and preparing to drive home, I experienced such severe chest pain and shortness of breath that I was unable to start the car or feel confident about driving safely. The episode wasn't just discomfort or mild symptoms that I could manage through rest and patience. For nearly 20 minutes, I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot, experiencing chest pain that radiated to my left arm, shortness of breath that made me feel like I couldn't get adequate air despite breathing deeply, and dizziness that made me afraid I might lose consciousness. Eventually, the symptoms subsided enough for me to drive home very slowly and carefully, but the experience was terrifying and humiliating in ways that forced me to confront the possibility that I was developing serious cardiovascular problems that could affect my independence, safety, and ability to maintain the lifestyle I had planned for my retirement years. That evening, I called Dr. Morrison's office and scheduled an emergency appointment for comprehensive cardiovascular evaluation, stress testing, and discussion of potential causes and treatment options for symptoms that were clearly beyond normal aging and required professional medical intervention. Mrs. Chen, I'm very glad you called, Dr. Morrison said when I described my symptoms during our phone conversation. The combination of chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, and dizziness that you're describing could indicate several different cardiovascular conditions that require immediate evaluation and diagnostic testing. We need to get you in for a complete workup as soon as possible. The medical appointment was scheduled for the following Monday, but Dr. Morrison advised me to avoid driving until we understood the cause of my symptoms and to consider asking family members or friends to assist with errands, transportation, and activities that might be affected by cardiovascular symptoms or treatment side effects. Mrs. Chen, I don't want to alarm you unnecessarily, but cardiovascular symptoms can be unpredictable and potentially dangerous, she explained with the careful professional tone that doctors use when discussing serious health concerns. Until we determine what's causing these episodes, it would be safer to limit your driving and ask for help with activities that could be problematic if you experience symptoms while away from home. This conversation marked the beginning of a period when I would need to acknowledge my developing health vulnerability and request assistance from family members, specifically Michael, during a medical crisis that would test his willingness to prioritize my well-being over his personal convenience and reveal his true character when I appeared to be potentially dependent on his support and care. The decision to contact Michael about my health concerns was complicated by several factors that made me hesitant to reach out for family support during what appeared to be a developing medical emergency. First, our relationship had been pleasant, but emotionally distant for years, with limited regular contact beyond holiday celebrations, birthday phone calls, and occasional family dinners where conversation remained superficial and focused on his career achievements and his children's activities. I didn't want to seem needy, dramatic, or demanding by suddenly requiring assistance after years of complete independence and self-sufficiency. I was also aware that Michael and Jennifer had busy lives with demanding careers, teenage children involved in multiple activities, and community commitments that filled their schedules and limited their availability for additional family obligations or caregiving responsibilities. Most importantly, I was still maintaining complete secrecy about my true financial situation and the college funds I was building for Emma and David, which meant that Michael believed I was living on modest retirement income and had limited financial resources for hiring professional assistants, medical care, or services that might make caregiving less burdensome for family members. From Michael's perspective, I appeared to be a typical elderly retiree who might soon require family support for medical care, transportation assistance, and potentially long-term caregiving if my health problems proved to be serious or progressive. He had no idea that I was financially capable of hiring professional assistants, paying for premium medical care, or compensating family members for time and effort they invested in my care. But Dr. Morrison's advice about avoiding driving and seeking assistance with daily activities made it clear that I needed family support during my medical evaluation and treatment. Regardless of the potential complications or relationship dynamics that might result from acknowledging my health vulnerability and apparent dependence on others. On Thursday evening, September 14, 2023, I called Michael and explained my cardiovascular symptoms, upcoming medical appointments, and need for temporary assistance with transportation, and possibly other daily activities until my condition could be diagnosed and treated effectively. "Mom, what kind of symptoms are you having?" Michael asked when I explained that I needed to discuss some health concerns and might need family assistance for the next few weeks while I underwent medical evaluation. "I've been experiencing chest pain, shortness of breath, and some dizziness episodes that my cardiologist wants to evaluate immediately," I explained, trying to sound calm and factual rather than alarmed or dramatic about symptoms that were genuinely frightening. "She's advised me to avoid driving until we understand what's causing these problems, so I was hoping you might be able to help with transportation to medical appointments and maybe some errands until we get this figured out." "Chest pain and dizziness?" Michael's tone immediately shifted to what sounded like concern, but which I would later realize was actually calculation about the potential time commitment, inconvenience, and caregiving responsibilities that my health problems might create for his already busy schedule and family obligations. "What kind of chest pain? Are we talking about serious heart problems that could require ongoing care and family assistance?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, feeling vulnerable about acknowledging cardiovascular symptoms that made me sound potentially incapacitated and unable to maintain my independence. "Dr. Morrison wants to run stress tests, echocardiograms, and other diagnostic procedures to determine what's causing the symptoms and what kind of treatment might be necessary." "When is your appointment?" Michael asked, and I could hear him discussing the situation with Jennifer in the background before returning to our conversation with obvious reluctance about the scheduling complications my medical needs might create. "Monday at 9 a.m. for the initial consultation, and she mentioned that I'll probably need additional testing appointments throughout the week depending on what she finds," I explained. "I was hoping you could drive me to the first appointment since she specifically advised against driving myself." "Monday at 9 a.m., Michael repeated, and I could hear him checking his calendar with audible frustration about the timing. "That's not great for me because I have a client presentation at 11 a.m. that I really can't reschedule. How long do you think the appointment will take?" Michael's immediate focus on scheduling inconvenience rather than concern about my cardiovascular symptoms was the first clear indication of how he would approach my medical crisis, viewing my health needs as disruptions to his routine, rather than understanding that family medical emergencies require prioritizing care over convenience and professional obligations. "I'm not sure how long the appointment will take," I replied, feeling disappointed by his response, but not entirely surprised given his historical pattern of viewing family responsibilities as obstacles to his personal and professional goals. Dr. Morrison mentioned that cardiac evaluations can be comprehensive and might include multiple tests depending on what she discovers during the examination. "Multiple tests?" Michael's tone revealed obvious frustration about the potential time, commitment, and ongoing caregiving responsibilities that my health problems might require. "Mom, I can't spend entire days at medical appointments. I have work responsibilities, client obligations, and family commitments that I can't just cancel or postpone because you're having some health issues." "I understand that you're busy," I said, feeling hurt by his characterization of potentially serious cardiovascular problems as some health issues, while also feeling guilty about creating inconvenience for Michael's professional and family schedule. "Maybe I could arrange for medical transport services or ask one of my neighbors for help with transportation." "Mom, you just said you're having chest pain and dizziness," Michael replied with logic that made his reluctance to help sound like reasonable concern rather than acknowledging his unwillingness to sacrifice his convenience for family medical needs. "I don't think you should be relying on neighbors or transport services when you're having cardiovascular symptoms that could be dangerous." "What about Jennifer?" I asked, hoping that maybe Michael's wife would be more available or willing to provide assistance during my medical crisis. "Jennifer has her own work schedule at the hospital, and Emma has soccer practice and David has piano lessons that require transportation and supervision," Michael explained, presenting his family's routine activities as equally important as my cardiovascular emergency. "We can't just reorganize our entire lives because you're having medical problems that might turn out to be minor or easily treatable." The phrase "medical problems that might turn out to be minor" minimized symptoms that my cardiologist had described as potentially serious and requiring immediate evaluation. Michael was already framing my health crisis as probably insignificant, rather than understanding that cardiovascular symptoms in a 71-year-old woman warranted family support and serious attention, regardless of the ultimate diagnosis. "Michael, I'm not asking you to reorganize your entire life," I said, trying to maintain a calm tone while feeling increasingly hurt and disappointed by his response to my request for basic family support during a health emergency. "I'm asking for help getting to medical appointments because my doctor advised against driving when I'm having cardiovascular symptoms." Okay, Michael agreed reluctantly after a long pause where I could hear him discussing scheduling options with Jennifer. "I'll figure out a way to take you to the Monday appointment. But Mom, if this turns into ongoing medical issues that require regular transportation and caregiving assistance, we're going to need to discuss other arrangements. Jennifer and I can't become full-time caregivers while managing our own careers and family responsibilities." The conversation ended with Michael agreeing to provide transportation to my initial medical appointment, but his reluctance and immediate discussion of other arrangements revealed his assumption that my health problems were likely to require sustained care that he wasn't willing to provide, even temporarily during diagnosis and treatment. More troubling was his reference to full-time caregivers in response to a request for help with a single medical appointment, suggesting that he was already viewing my cardiovascular symptoms as indicators of long-term dependency rather than as temporary medical issues that might be easily treated once properly diagnosed and managed. The following week, while waiting for my cardiology appointment, I experienced additional symptoms that made me increasingly concerned about my condition and more dependent on others for assistance with daily activities that I had always managed completely independently throughout my retirement years. The chest pain episodes increased in frequency and intensity, occurring not just during physical activity, but also during rest periods when I was reading, watching television, or preparing simple meals. I found myself needing to stop frequently during routine household tasks and requiring longer recovery periods between activities that had previously been effortless. The shortness of breath became more pronounced and began affecting my sleep quality, as I would wake up during the night feeling like I couldn't breathe adequately despite being in a comfortable, familiar environment. I started sleeping propped up on multiple pillows to improve my breathing, and I began avoiding activities that required sustained physical effort or coordination. Most concerning were episodes of chest pain combined with nausea and sweating that occurred unpredictably and made me feel weak, dizzy, and genuinely frightened about my cardiovascular condition and immediate safety. These episodes forced me to acknowledge that I was becoming genuinely vulnerable and potentially unable to live completely independently without assistance, at least until my medical condition could be diagnosed and treated effectively. These symptoms created the exact vulnerability that would allow Michael to reveal his true priorities when faced with caregiving responsibilities that offered no personal benefit, professional advancement, or compensation for his time and effort. On Monday, September 18th, Michael arrived at my house to provide transportation to my cardiology appointment. But his behavior during the drive revealed his attitude toward my health crisis and his resentment about providing family support that interfered with his professional schedule and personal priorities. "Mom, I want you to know that I had to reschedule 2 important client meetings to be here today," he announced as we drove to Dr. Morrison's office. "This appointment is potentially costing me commission opportunities and could affect my monthly sales targets and year-end performance evaluation." "I appreciate you taking time from work," I replied, feeling guilty about the professional inconvenience while also feeling hurt that he was quantifying the cost of helping his mother during a cardiovascular emergency. "I understand that this creates complications for your schedule. I just want to make sure you understand that this kind of schedule disruption can't become a regular pattern," Michael continued with the tone of someone establishing boundaries, rather than providing temporary family support during a health crisis. "Jennifer and I both have demanding careers and family obligations that we can't ignore every time you have medical appointments or health concerns." "Michael, I don't even know what's wrong with me yet," I said, feeling frustrated by his assumption that I would require ongoing assistance rather than hoping that my condition might be easily treatable. "This might be something that can be resolved with medication or simple lifestyle changes. But Mom, you have to be realistic about aging and cardiovascular problems," he replied with the condescending tone of someone explaining obvious facts to someone who wasn't thinking clearly. "People your age often develop chronic conditions that require ongoing medical management and family assistance. You need to start thinking about long-term care options rather than assuming that temporary help will solve these problems." Michael was already discussing long-term care options before my cardiovascular condition had even been diagnosed, suggesting that he was hoping my health problems would be serious enough to justify transferring caregiving responsibilities to professional facilities rather than expecting family members to provide support during treatment and recovery. The cardiology appointment with Dr. Morrison included comprehensive examination, electrocardiogram, blood tests, chest X-rays, and echocardiogram that led to a diagnosis of coronary artery disease with significant blockages that required immediate intervention through cardiac catheterization and possible stent placement. Mrs. Chen, The test results show that you have substantial blockages in 2 of your major coronary arteries, Dr. Morrison explained after reviewing diagnostic results and examination findings. This explains your chest pain, shortness of breath, and fatigue symptoms. We need to perform cardiac catheterization this week to evaluate the blockages and determine whether stent placement or bypass surgery will be necessary. What does that mean for recovery time and ongoing care requirements? Michael asked immediately, clearly focused on caregiving implications rather than my health prognosis or treatment success potential. The catheterization procedure itself is minimally invasive and typically requires only overnight hospitalization, Dr. Morrison explained. If stent placement is successful, Mrs. Chen should experience significant improvement in her symptoms within a few weeks. However, she'll need assistance with transportation to follow up appointments, medication management to ensure proper compliance, and activity restrictions during the initial recovery period. How long will she need assistance? Michael pressed, obviously hoping for a specific end date for caregiving responsibilities. We'll reassess after the procedure, but typically patients need family support for 4 to 6 weeks while they adjust to new medications and gradually resume normal activities, Dr. Morrison replied. Mrs. Chen should experience substantial improvement fairly quickly if the intervention is successful. 6 weeks of regular assistance and transportation? Michael's tone revealed obvious frustration about the time commitment and caregiving expectations that Dr. Morrison had outlined. That's a significant family obligation for people who have their own careers and responsibilities. Dr. Morrison looked surprised by Michael's focus on caregiving burden rather than relief that his mother's condition was treatable and had an excellent prognosis with appropriate intervention. Mr. Chen, your mother's condition is very treatable with modern cardiac procedures, she said with professional patience. Many patients return to completely normal activities after successful stent placement. The temporary assistance requirements are minimal compared to the long-term health benefits of proper treatment. The drive home from the cardiology appointment revealed Michael's true feelings about providing temporary family support during my cardiac treatment and recovery. Instead of feeling relieved that my condition was treatable and had an excellent prognosis, he seemed frustrated by the 6-week timeline and concerned about the caregiving expectations that Dr. Morrison had described. Mom, 6 weeks of regular assistance and medical appointments is a lot to ask from family members, he said as we drove back to my house. Jennifer and I both work full-time, and the kids have activities and school commitments that require our attention and transportation. We can't reorganize our entire family schedule around your medical recovery. Michael, I'm not asking you to reorganize your entire family schedule, I replied, hurt by his characterization of temporary cardiac recovery. Assistance as unreasonable family demands. I'm dealing with coronary artery disease that requires a medical procedure and short-term recovery support. But Mom, even temporary caregiving is a big responsibility that affects our work schedules, family time, and other commitments. He continued with the tone of someone explaining why family support was impractical, rather than understanding that cardiac emergencies require family cooperation during treatment. What if your recovery takes longer than the doctor expects? What if you develop complications that require more intensive care? We need to think about backup plans and alternative arrangements. What kind of alternative arrangements? I asked, though I was beginning to understand that Michael was looking for ways to transfer caregiving responsibilities to someone else rather than providing family support during cardiac recovery. Well, there are home health services that specialize in cardiac recovery assistance, Michael explained, revealing that he had already been researching alternatives to family caregiving. They have trained professionals who can provide transportation, medication management, and recovery monitoring that family members aren't really qualified to handle safely. Michael, Dr. Morrison said I need family support, not professional nursing care, I said, shocked that he was already trying to outsource caregiving for conditions that primarily required transportation assistance and basic family presence during recovery. But Mom, You have to consider whether family members can really provide the kind of professional care and safety monitoring that cardiac patients need. He replied with logic that made abandoning me sound like responsible medical planning. Professional home health services have expertise and resources that family members can't match. It might actually be safer and better for your recovery to have professional supervision rather than relying on family members who don't have medical training. This conversation revealed that Michael was already looking for justifications to transfer my care to professional services rather than providing temporary family support during a treatable cardiac condition. He was framing professional care as superior to family care, rather than understanding that cardiac recovery primarily required emotional support, transportation assistance, and basic family presence during treatment. Over the following days, while I prepared for cardiac catheterization and stent placement, Michael's approach to my care revealed the calculating, self-serving character that had been evident since childhood, but was now being applied to my medical vulnerability in ways that would ultimately determine his access to the college funds I had been secretly building for his children. Michael provided minimal assistance during my pre-procedure preparation, offering help only when it was convenient for his schedule, and consistently looking for opportunities to demonstrate that family caregiving was inadequate and that professional services would be more appropriate for my recovery needs. When I asked for help with grocery shopping before my procedure, Michael would complain about the time required and suggest that grocery delivery services would be more efficient and reliable. When I needed transportation to pre-procedure appointments, he would express frustration about work conflicts and recommend medical transport services that could provide more consistent scheduling. Most concerning, Michael began making comments about my living situation and independence that seemed designed to undermine my confidence and create justification for long-term care arrangements rather than supporting my recovery and return to independent living. "Mom, this house is really too big for someone with cardiac problems," he would comment when visiting for brief assistance with household tasks. "All these stairs and the yard maintenance are probably too much stress for your heart condition. Your medication schedule is getting pretty complicated," he would say when observing my prescription bottles and cardiac recovery instructions. "It seems like a lot of medications to manage safely without professional supervision. You seemed pretty tired after that short walk to the mailbox," he would mention to Jennifer and other family members, creating a narrative that my cardiac condition was more limiting than it actually was, and building support for care arrangements that would eliminate his caregiving responsibilities. These comments revealed that Michael was actively working to create justification for transferring my care to professional facilities or services rather than supporting my cardiac recovery and return to independence. He was exaggerating my limitations, undermining my confidence, and building family consensus that I was incapable of independent living, despite medical advice that cardiac patients typically return to normal activities after successful stent placement. Most troubling, Michael began researching assisted living facilities and home health services without my knowledge or consent, presenting this research as responsible family planning rather than acknowledging that he was looking for ways to abandon caregiving responsibilities that he found inconvenient and burdensome. The stage was being set for Michael to make the decision that would reveal his true character and cost him access to $329,000 in college funding. A decision based on his assumption that I was a financially dependent cardiac patient, rather than understanding that I was secretly controlling educational resources beyond his imagination and carefully observing his response to my apparent vulnerability and medical needs. Michael's behavior during my cardiac crisis was providing me with invaluable information about his priorities, character, and willingness to support family members during genuine medical need. But he had no idea that his caregiving decisions were actually determining his children's educational future, and that the mother he was planning to abandon in professional care was secretly positioned to either reward or punish his choices in ways that would affect his family for generations to come. What happened over the following 6 weeks would reveal the complete depth of Michael's selfishness and his willingness to abandon family members when caregiving required sustained effort. without personal benefit or compensation. But more importantly, his decisions during this period would demonstrate exactly how he viewed elderly parents who appeared financially vulnerable and potentially dependent on family support for medical care and daily assistance. My cardiac catheterization and stent placement procedure on September 25, 2023, was successful beyond Dr. Morrison's expectations. The two blocked arteries were cleared completely, stents were placed without complications, and my recovery was proceeding ahead of schedule with immediate improvement in chest pain, breathing capacity, and energy levels that had been compromised by coronary artery blockages. Mrs. Chen, your procedure results are excellent, Dr. Morrison told me during my first follow-up appointment 3 days after the catheterization. The stents are functioning perfectly, blood flow to your heart muscle has been restored completely, and your cardiac function tests show significant improvement already. With proper medication management and gradual activity increase, you should return to full normal activities within 4 to 6 weeks. This was encouraging news that should have relieved any family concerns about long-term caregiving responsibilities or ongoing medical dependency. My cardiac condition had been successfully treated, my prognosis was excellent, and I would soon be able to return to the independent lifestyle I had maintained throughout my retirement years. But Michael's response to this positive medical news revealed that he had been hoping my health problems would be serious enough to justify transferring me to professional care facilities, rather than being pleased that his mother was recovering well and would regain her independence quickly. Are you sure she's ready for complete independence so soon? Michael pressed Dr. Morrison during the follow-up appointment that he had reluctantly attended after complaining about missing work again. She's been pretty weak and disoriented over the past few weeks. What if her symptoms return or her condition gets worse? Mr. Chen, your mother's cardiac function has been restored to normal levels, Dr. Morrison replied with slight puzzlement about Michael's persistence in questioning my positive recovery progress. The stents have eliminated the blockages that were causing her symptoms. While we'll continue monitoring her progress, there's no medical reason to expect deterioration or to recommend institutional care at this point. But what about safety? Considerations? Michael continued, revealing his ongoing search for justifications to avoid ongoing family support responsibilities. She's living alone in a 2-story house with yard maintenance and household responsibilities. Even if her heart condition improves, isn't she at risk for falls, medication errors, or other emergencies that could be serious at her age? Dr. Morrison looked increasingly concerned about Michael's focus on worst-case scenarios, rather than celebrating my successful treatment and recovery. Mr. Chen, your mother is 71 years old with excellent overall health, apart from the coronary blockages we've just successfully treated. Many people her age live independently for decades. Unless she experiences specific safety incidents or her cardiac condition changes unexpectedly, there's no medical justification for restricting her independence or recommending institutional care. The drive home from this appointment revealed Michael's true feelings about my recovery and his frustration that my improving health meant he couldn't justify abandoning caregiving responsibilities by transferring me to professional care facilities that would eliminate his family obligations. Mom, I think the doctor is being overly optimistic about your recovery timeline, he said as we drove back to my house. You've been pretty dependent and confused over the past few weeks, and I don't think a few days of improvement means you're ready to live completely alone without any family support or supervision. Michael, my cardiac symptoms have improved dramatically since the stent placement, I replied, confused by his reluctance to accept positive medical news and professional assessment of my recovery progress. Dr. Morrison said my heart function has been restored to normal levels and that I should be able to resume regular activities within a few weeks. But Mom, you have to be realistic about your limitations and our family's capacity to provide ongoing support, he replied with increasing frustration about my recovery expectations. The doctor only sees you for brief appointments every few weeks, but I'm the one who's been dealing with your medication confusion, transportation needs, and safety concerns on a daily basis. What medication confusion? I asked, since I had Been managing my cardiac medications successfully with a pill organizer system that Dr. Morrison had reviewed and approved during my discharge planning. You seem uncertain about dosing schedules and timing, Michael said, creating false evidence of cognitive problems that didn't exist. And you've been hesitant about driving and household activities that suggest you're not as confident about your independence as you're claiming to be. I've been following Dr. Morrison's advice about gradually resuming normal activities, I explained, realizing that Michael was misrepresenting my careful adherence to medical recovery guidelines as evidence of confusion and incapacity. She specifically recommended avoiding driving for 2 weeks and limiting physical activity until my follow-up appointments confirmed successful healing. But Mom, even temporary dependency creates ongoing family responsibilities that affect everyone's schedules and commitments, Michael continued, revealing his fundamental resentment about providing any family support during my cardiac recovery. Jennifer and I can't continue rearranging our lives around your medical appointments and daily care needs indefinitely. Michael, it's been 3 weeks since my procedure, I said, feeling hurt by his characterization of brief temporary assistance as an indefinite burden. Dr. Morrison expects me to be completely independent within another 2 or 3 weeks. This isn't indefinite caregiving. It's short-term recovery support. But what if your recovery takes longer than expected? He pressed, revealing his hope that my condition would justify long-term care arrangements. What if you develop complications or other health problems? What if you have another cardiac event that requires more intensive family support? Michael was actively looking for reasons to justify abandoning my care, rather than being relieved that my cardiac treatment was successful and that I would soon regain my independence without requiring ongoing family assistance. Over the following 2 weeks, as my cardiac recovery continued progressing excellently, and I began resuming normal activities like driving, grocery shopping, and household management, Michael escalated his campaign to convince me that I needed long-term professional care despite my successful medical treatment and return to independence. His approach revealed sophisticated manipulation tactics designed to undermine my confidence in my recovery, create artificial safety concerns, and build justification for care arrangements that would eliminate his family responsibilities while making his abandonment sound like responsible planning for my well-being. Mom, I noticed you seemed tired after that short walk around the block yesterday, he would say during his increasingly infrequent visits, creating false evidence of ongoing limitations. That seems concerning for someone who's supposedly recovered from major cardiac surgery. The reality was that I had taken a 45-minute walk around my neighborhood, the same distance I had walked daily before my cardiac problems, and had felt energetic and confident about my recovery progress. But Michael was presenting normal, post-procedure activity as evidence of ongoing weakness and incapacity. Your medication schedule still seems pretty complicated to manage safely, he would comment when observing my pill organizer and cardiac recovery instructions. It would be easy to make dangerous mistakes with blood thinners and heart medications without professional supervision. I had been managing my medications successfully with the same systematic approach I had used for complex client portfolios during my financial planning career. But Michael was presenting my organized medication management as evidence that the task was too complex for me to handle safely without institutional supervision. This house really seems like too much responsibility for someone recovering from heart problems, he would observe when visiting my home, which I had been maintaining successfully throughout my retirement years. All the maintenance, yard work, and household management could create stress that's bad for your cardiac recovery. These comments were designed to create a narrative that I was failing to maintain my independence and household responsibilities, despite the fact that my recovery was progressing excellently and I was successfully managing all aspects of independent living. Most manipulatively, Michael began suggesting that I was becoming socially isolated and that professional care would provide community interaction and safety monitoring that would benefit my emotional well-being and cardiac recovery. Mom, you don't seem to have much social contact or community involvement since your heart problems, he would say, ignoring my continued participation in investment club meetings, library volunteer work, and neighborhood activities that had resumed as my health improved. Assisted living facilities have organized activities, social programs, and medical monitoring that would be good for cardiac patients, he would continue. You'd have more social interaction and professional health supervision than you can get living alone in this big house. Michael was presenting my independent lifestyle as social isolation and medical neglect, rather than recognizing that I had maintained active community involvement and appropriate medical care throughout my cardiac treatment and recovery. The breaking point came during the first week of November 2023, when Michael announced that he had scheduled tours of 3 assisted living facilities without consulting me or obtaining my consent to visit institutional care options that I had consistently said I didn't want or need. Mom, I've set up appointments for us to visit some really nice senior living communities this week, he announced during a phone call on Monday morning. I think you'll be impressed by the services and amenities they offer for people with cardiac conditions. Michael, I didn't agree to tour assisted living facilities, I replied, shocked that he had made appointments without my knowledge or permission. I told you that I want to continue living independently now that my cardiac condition has been successfully treated. But Mom, you need to be open-minded about your options and what would be best for your long-term health and safety, he persisted, with the condescending tone that suggested he didn't believe I was capable of making rational decisions about my own care and living arrangements. These facilities specialize in cardiac care and recovery support, and they have excellent reputations for helping seniors maintain independence while providing safety monitoring and medical supervision. I don't need medical supervision, I said firmly. Dr. Morrison has confirmed that my cardiac function is normal and that I can live independently safely. Mom, I think you're being unrealistic about your limitations and risks, Michael replied with the kind of paternalistic attitude that suggested he believed he had the right to override my decisions about my own life and living arrangements. As your family, we have a responsibility to make sure you're in the safest possible environment, especially after a major cardiac event. Who is we? I asked, though I was beginning to understand that Michael and Jennifer had been discussing my future without including me in these conversations. Jennifer and I have been talking about what would be best for your long-term care and safety, Michael admitted, revealing that they had been planning my institutional placement without my participation or consent. We're both concerned about your living situation and think you should at least look at alternatives before dismissing them. This revelation that Michael and Jennifer had been planning my institutional care without my involvement was deeply hurtful and revealed the extent to which they viewed me as incompetent and unable to participate in decisions about my own life, housing, and medical care. Michael, I'm your mother, not a problem to be managed, I said, feeling angry and betrayed by their approach to my recovery and independence. I should be included in any discussions about my care, and my preferences should be respected unless there are compelling medical reasons to override them. Mom, we're not trying to manage you, Michael replied defensively. We're trying to help you make good decisions about your future that take into account safety concerns and practical realities that you might not be considering fully. What safety concerns and practical realities? I asked. Dr. Morrison said, my recovery has been excellent and that I can live independently safely. What medical or safety issues justify institutional care that my own cardiologist hasn't identified or recommended? It's not just about current medical conditions, Michael explained, revealing his strategy of justifying institutional care based on hypothetical future problems rather than current medical needs. It's about being proactive and preparing for potential health challenges that could arise as you continue aging. Assisted living provides safeguards and support systems that could prevent serious problems before they become medical emergencies. Michael was advocating for institutional care based on speculative future problems rather than current medical needs, while dismissing my cardiologist's assessment that I was recovering well and could maintain independent living safely. The assisted Living facility tours that Michael had scheduled without my consent became the catalyst for the confrontation that would ultimately reveal his true character and lead to the college fund decision that would change both of our lives forever. On Wednesday, November 8th, 2023, Michael arrived at my house to transport me to the first facility tour. Despite my continued objections to visiting institutional care options that I didn't want and didn't need according to my medical provider. "Mom, I'm not asking you to make any decisions today," he said when I reiterated my reluctance to tour assisted living facilities. "I'm just asking you to look at what's available and keep an open mind about options that might benefit your long-term health and safety." "Michael, I've been clear that I want to continue living independently," I replied, feeling frustrated by his refusal to respect my clearly stated preferences. "Visiting facilities will just waste everyone's time because I'm not interested in institutional care." "But Mom, you haven't seen what modern assisted living is like," he persisted with increasing impatience. "These aren't the nursing homes you might remember from decades ago. They're more like resort communities with luxury amenities, social activities, and professional medical support." The first facility, Golden Years Assisted Living, was located in a lower-income area of the suburbs and was clearly chosen for its affordability rather than its quality, amenities, or appropriateness for someone in my financial situation. Despite Michael's promises of luxury amenities, the facility was obviously understaffed, poorly maintained, and designed to provide minimal care at the lowest possible cost. The lobby smelled of industrial disinfectant and food odors. The furniture was worn and uncomfortable, and the staff members we encountered seemed overwhelmed and stressed rather than providing the professional, caring service that Michael had promised I would find in institutional care. "This is our cardiac care wing," the facility director explained as we toured corridors lined with residents who appeared sedated, understimulated, and largely ignored by staff members who were too busy with basic care tasks to provide meaningful social interaction or therapeutic activities. "What kind of activities and social programs do you offer?" I asked, hoping to understand what Michael thought would be superior to my current lifestyle of community involvement, volunteer work, and active social connections. "We have bingo on Tuesdays and movie nights on Fridays," the director replied, describing a social calendar that was far less engaging than my current activities of investment club meetings, library volunteering, neighborhood association participation, and cultural events at the community center. "What about rehabilitation services and therapeutic programs for cardiac patients who are recovering from successful procedures?" I asked, testing whether the facility could provide the kind of supportive care that would actually benefit someone in my situation. "Our approach focuses on safety and comfort rather than intensive rehabilitation," the director explained, revealing that the facility was designed for long-term custodial care rather than supporting recovery and return to independence. This facility was clearly inappropriate for someone in my condition and financial situation, but Michael seemed pleased with the tour and encouraged me to consider it as a viable option for my care. "Mom, this seems like a really safe and comfortable environment," he said as we left the facility. "The staff seems caring and professional, and the safety features would provide peace of mind for the whole family." "Michael, this facility is designed for people with advanced dementia and serious physical limitations," I replied, shocked that he thought institutional care for severely impaired residents was appropriate for my situation. "I don't need that level of supervision or restriction of my independence. But Mom, it's better to be in a safe environment with more care than you need, rather than taking risks with independence that could lead to serious problems," he argued, revealing his willingness to recommend unnecessary institutional care to eliminate any family caregiving responsibilities. The second facility, Sunset Manor, assisted living, was slightly better maintained but still focused on providing minimal care at moderate cost rather than supporting resident independence or offering the amenities that Michael had promised I would find in modern Senior living communities. The rooms were small and institutional. The dining options were limited and unappetizing, and the activity calendar consisted primarily of passive entertainment rather than the engaging, meaningful activities that I enjoyed in my independent lifestyle. "What are the monthly costs for residents here?" I asked, testing whether Michael had researched the financial implications of institutional care for someone he believed had limited retirement income. "The basic package is for $200 monthly, with additional charges for medication management, assistance with personal care, and transportation to medical appointments," the facility administrator explained. "Most residents pay between $4,800 and $5,500 monthly, depending on their care needs and service requirements. These costs would consume most of my apparent retirement income and would quickly exhaust my visible savings if continued long-term." But Michael showed no concern about the financial burden or offered any suggestions for how I would fund institutional care that he considered necessary for my safety and well-being. "Those costs are pretty standard for quality assisted living care," Michael commented, as if $5,000 plus monthly expenses were reasonable for someone he believed was living on modest retirement income. "Michael, that's more than my apparent monthly expenses for housing, food, healthcare, and everything else combined," I said, testing his response to financial concerns about care he was recommending. "Mom, you have to think of it as an investment in your safety and long-term health," he replied, without offering to help with costs or acknowledging that such expenses would be financially devastating for someone in my apparent financial situation. "Besides," he added, revealing his true motivations, "you could sell your house to help fund assisted living costs. That equity isn't doing you any good just sitting there when you could be using it for professional care and safety." Michael was suggesting that I should liquidate my primary asset to fund institutional care that would benefit him by eliminating his caregiving responsibilities, rather than understanding that my house represented both my preferred living situation and my apparent financial security. The third facility, Heritage Oaks Senior Community, was the most expensive and highest quality of the three options, but it was also clearly beyond what Michael believed I could afford based on his understanding of my financial situation. "This facility looks nice, but the costs are probably prohibitive for your budget," Michael said before we even toured the facility. "They're asking $6,500 monthly for basic services, which is probably more than we should realistically consider." His willingness to dismiss higher quality care based on cost, while showing no concern about the financial burden of cheaper facilities, revealed that Michael was primarily focused on finding the most affordable way to transfer caregiving responsibilities, rather than ensuring that I received appropriate care in an environment that would enhance my well-being. The turning point came that evening when Michael and Jennifer visited my house to discuss the facility tours and pressure me to make a decision about institutional placement that I had never agreed was necessary or appropriate for my situation. "Mom, we think Golden Years would be the best option for your needs and budget," Jennifer announced, despite having minimal involvement in my care or understanding of my medical condition and recovery progress. "It provides the safety and supervision you need while being financially manageable on your retirement income," Michael added, revealing that they had already decided on the cheapest facility, regardless of its quality or appropriateness for my actual care needs. "I don't want to live in institutional care," I said firmly. "Dr. Morrison has confirmed that I'm recovering well and can live independently safely. I want to remain in my own home." "Mom, we're concerned that you're not thinking clearly about your limitations and risks," Jennifer replied with condescension that suggested she didn't believe I was competent to make decisions about my own life and care needs. "What specific limitations and risks?" I asked, demanding concrete evidence for their claims. "What safety concerns or care needs justify institutional placement that my cardiologist hasn't identified or recommended?" "You've been confused and dependent since your heart problems," Michael said, exaggerating symptoms that had largely resolved with successful treatment. "You've needed help with basic activities, transportation, and medical management. You're living alone in a house that's Too big and potentially dangerous for someone with cardiac issues. My cardiac symptoms have resolved with successful treatment, I replied. Dr. Morrison expects continued improvement and return to normal function. There's no medical justification for institutional care. But Mom, what if your symptoms return? Jennifer asked, basing care recommendations on hypothetical worst-case scenarios. What if you develop other health problems? What if you have a cardiac emergency when no one is around to help? Those are risks that all elderly people face, I said. That doesn't mean everyone over 70 should abandon independent living for institutional care. Mom, we've made arrangements for you to move to Golden Years next week, Michael announced, revealing the ultimate betrayal, that they had proceeded with institutional placement without my consent or agreement. You've made arrangements without my permission? I asked, shocked that they had committed me to institutional care despite my clear objections and contrary to medical advice supporting independent living. We've completed the admission paperwork and paid the deposit, Jennifer explained matter-of-factly. The facility is expecting you to move in on Monday, November 13th. I didn't agree to move to institutional care, I said, feeling completely betrayed by family members who were supposed to support my well-being and respect my autonomy. You've made these arrangements against my will and contrary to my doctor's recommendations. Mom, sometimes family members need to make difficult decisions when elderly relatives aren't thinking clearly about their safety and limitations, Michael replied, revealing that he believed he had the right to override my decisions about my own life and living arrangements. I am thinking clearly, I said firmly. I've been evaluated by my cardiologist, who confirmed that I can live independently safely. You're ignoring medical advice and my clearly expressed preferences to pursue institutional care that serves your convenience rather than my well-being? That's not true, Michael protested. We're trying to do what's best for you, even if it's not what you want to hear. If you were trying to do what's best for me, you would respect my autonomy, follow medical advice, and support my recovery rather than forcing me into institutional care against my will, I replied, realizing that this conversation was revealing the fundamental character flaws that would determine Michael's future relationship with his mother and his access to his children's college funding. The confrontation escalated when I discovered that Michael and Jennifer had not only committed me to Golden Years without my consent, but had also misrepresented my condition and situation to facility administrators to ensure my acceptance into institutional care that I neither wanted nor needed. Mom, what's happening? Michael asked when he saw the assembled professionals who were obviously not there to facilitate my institutional placement. I'm not moving to institutional care, I announced calmly. I've canceled your arrangements, forfeited your deposits, and contacted appropriate authorities about your attempts to force institutional placement against my will and contrary to medical advice. But we've made all the arrangements, Jennifer protested. The facility is expecting you, and we've paid deposits that can't be refunded. The deposits you paid without my consent for institutional care I never agreed to accept, I corrected. Those financial losses are consequences of your decision to proceed with arrangements that I explicitly refused. Mrs. Chen has been clear about her desire to remain in independent living, Dr. Morrison explained to Michael and Jennifer. Her cardiac condition supports independent living, and there are no clinical indications for institutional care at this time. Furthermore, the Adult Protective Services representative added, elderly people have the right to make their own living arrangements when they retain decision-making capacity, regardless of family preferences or convenience. Mrs. Chen, Ken sat. You tell us about the college fund withdrawal you completed this morning? My attorney asked, officially documenting the financial consequences of Michael's character failure. I withdrew $329,000 from education savings accounts I had been building for my grandchildren, I explained for the record. These funds have been redirected to charitable organizations serving elderly people who face family exploitation and abandonment. Michael's face revealed shock, devastation, and growing understanding that his assumptions about my financial helplessness had cost his family more money than he would earn in 5 years of his accounting career. Mom, Emma, and David don't deserve to lose their college funding because of our mistakes, he said desperately. Emma and David are losing their college funding because their parents demonstrated that they view elderly family members as burdens to be managed rather than people deserving care and respect, I replied. Can we earn back the college funding? Jennifer asked. What would we need to do to restore the education accounts? The college funding is gone permanently, I said firmly. It's been donated to benefit thousands of elderly people who face situations similar to mine, families who assume they are financially helpless and can be exploited without consequences. But our children's educational future, Michael protested. Your children's educational future is now your responsibility to fund through your own savings and planning, I replied. The educational gift I was building for them has been redirected to serve more deserving purposes. 6 months after the college fund withdrawal, Michael and Jennifer's attempts to maintain contact gradually decreased as they realized that my decision was permanent and that I was no longer a source of financial resources or inheritance expectations. My cardiac recovery was complete with no lasting effects from the coronary artery blockages that had created my temporary vulnerability. More importantly, the health crisis had provided invaluable education about family relationships and the difference between genuine care and exploitative manipulation disguised as concern. The $329,000 that Michael and Jennifer lost funded legal advocacy services for 150 elderly people facing family financial exploitation, provided emergency assistance for elderly victims of abandonment and abuse, and supported research into elder abuse prevention and family coercion tactics. Emma and David would need to fund their own college education through scholarships, student loans, and part-time employment, the same path that millions of students follow when their families don't have access to substantial educational resources. My updated will ensures that my remaining assets will benefit charitable organizations serving elderly people rather than family members who proved they couldn't be trusted during my most vulnerable moment. Today, at 72 years old, I am healthy, independent, and surrounded by community members and charitable organizations that provide genuine care and support without expecting financial compensation in return. My estate planning reflects my values and priorities rather than the manipulative demands of family members who proved they viewed me as a burden rather than a family member deserving respect and care. The institutional placement that seemed so urgent when Michael believed I was broke and helpless proved to be the most expensive mistake of his life. His decision to prioritize his convenience over my well-being cost him more money than most families accumulate in a lifetime of savings. Sometimes the cheapest assisted living facility leads to the most expensive lesson about assuming elderly. Parents are financial burdens and can be abandoned without consequences. If you're watching this story and recognizing similar patterns in your own family relationships, I want you to know that you have more power than family members might realize when they assume you're financially helpless and unable to defend yourself against exploitation and manipulation. Health crises don't mean you have to accept abandonment, coercion, or institutional placement from family members who view your vulnerability as their opportunity to eliminate caregiving responsibilities through arrangements that serve their convenience rather than your well-being. You have the right to expect genuine family support during medical recovery without being forced into institutional care that you don't want or need, based on family assumptions about your financial capacity or inability to resist their manipulation. You have the right to have your autonomy and preferences respected when you retain decision-making capacity, regardless of family members' assumptions about what would be more convenient for them or less burdensome for their schedules and responsibilities. You have the right to make your own living arrangements based on medical advice and personal preferences, rather than family pressure, manipulation, or coercion designed to eliminate their caregiving obligations. And you have the right to modify financial planning, inheritance arrangements, and educational funding based on how family members actually treat you during health crises. including through financial consequences that reflect the true cost of their betrayal, abandonment, and exploitation of your apparent vulnerability. Trust me when I tell you that sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is allow family members to experience the financial consequences of assuming elderly relatives are burdens who can be exploited without repercussions. The college fund. Withdrawal I made wasn't punishment. It was education about the true cost of prioritizing personal convenience over family loyalty and the expense of assuming that elderly parents are financially powerless and unable to defend themselves against manipulation and institutional coercion. Michael learned that elderly family members who appear vulnerable may actually control substantial resources and have the power to reward genuine care or punish exploitation and abandonment through financial decisions that reflect their true character and priorities when they believed family members needed support. The $329,000 in college funding that Michael and Jennifer lost will now provide assistance to hundreds of elderly people facing similar family exploitation, fund legal advocacy services that protect vulnerable adults from institutional coercion, and support research into elder abuse prevention that will help future generations of elderly people defend themselves against family members who view them as burdens rather than recognizing their worth and dignity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for future generations of elderly people is to demonstrate that exploiting vulnerability and assuming financial helplessness can result in consequences more expensive than most families can imagine or recover from financially. The assisted living facility that Michael thought would solve his caregiving inconvenience became the catalyst for the most costly mistake of his life, and the mother he assumed was a financial burden became the source of educational consequences that will affect his children's opportunities for decades to come. What would you have done if your family tried to force you into institutional care against your will while assuming you were financially helpless? Have you ever been underestimated by family members who made assumptions about your resources and ability to defend yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know if this story has inspired you to examine your own financial planning and family relationship dynamics. And if you found this story of reclaiming power and demanding genuine care during health vulnerability resonating with you, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories of people who chose dignity and autonomy when others tried to exploit their apparent helplessness. Sometimes the cheapest assisted living placement can lead to the most expensive education about the cost of assuming elderly parents are financial burdens, and the most profound appreciation for the thousands of elderly people who will now benefit from resources that were almost wasted on family members who demonstrated they didn't deserve the privilege of educational funding through their treatment of vulnerable relatives during times of apparent need. Remember, your worth isn't determined by your apparent financial situation. Your power doesn't disappear during health crises, and your financial decisions should reflect the true character of people who claim to care about you when they believe you have nothing valuable to offer in return. Thank you for watching, and remember, never underestimate the power of an elderly person who appears vulnerable but is actually in complete control of resources that could change your family's future forever, especially when your treatment of them during their apparent helplessness determines whether you'll benefit from those resources or whether they'll be redirected to people who actually deserve them. The nursing home that Michael thought would eliminate his family responsibilities became the most expensive decision of his life, and the college fund he never knew existed became a charitable legacy that will benefit thousands of elderly people who face similar exploitation and abandonment by family members who assume financial helplessness means powerlessness. Sometimes justice comes with compound interest, and the bill for treating elderly parents as burdens rather than family members becomes due in full when those parents reveal the resources they were controlling while their character was being tested and their family relationships were being evaluated. The $329,000 that Michael lost represents more than just college funding. It represents the cost of assuming that elderly people who need temporary support are permanent burdens rather than family members deserving respect, care, and genuine concern regardless of their apparent financial capacity to compensate others for their attention and assistance. Emma and David will now understand the true cost of their parents' character failures, and they'll learn that educational opportunities must be earned through family values like loyalty, respect, and genuine care for vulnerable relatives rather than inherited as automatic benefits from grandparents who are treated as conveniences when helpful and burdens when they need support. Michael's accounting background should have taught him about compound interest and long-term financial planning, but he never calculated the potential cost of treating his mother as a financial liability, rather than understanding that she might be the greatest asset his family would ever have access to, if he had proven worthy of that access through his character and priorities during her time of apparent need. The cardiac stents that restored my heart function also restored my clarity about family relationships and the difference between people who provide genuine care versus those who offer conditional support based on their assumptions about benefit and burden, convenience and compensation. Today, my heart is strong, my mind is clear, and my financial decisions reflect the reality that family loyalty should be demonstrated during times of vulnerability rather than claimed retroactively after discovering that apparently helpless relatives were actually controlling resources that could transform your family's future for generations. The assisted living tour that was supposed to demonstrate institutional options became a tour of Michael's character, deficiencies, and the family meeting that was supposed to finalize my placement became the moment when I finalized his financial consequences. Sometimes the most expensive education comes from assumptions that seem reasonable but prove to be catastrophically wrong, and sometimes the greatest financial loss results from failing to recognize the difference between apparent vulnerability and actual powerlessness. Michael assumed that a 72-year-old woman recovering from cardiac procedures was a burden, to be managed rather than a family member to be cherished. And that assumption cost him more than most people save for retirement, more than most families accumulate in educational planning, and more than he will likely earn in the remaining years of his accounting career. The college fund that could have secured his children's educational future became the funding source for legal advocacy that will protect hundreds of elderly people from the same exploitation and abandonment that Michael attempted to impose on his own mother. Justice has been served with the kind of compound interest that only comes from decades of financial expertise applied to family relationship education, and the lesson has been delivered with the precision that only comes from a lifetime of managing other people's money and understanding the true value of family loyalty when it's tested by apparent vulnerability and genuine need. This is what happens when someone calls their parent a financial burden, while that parent is secretly funding their children's entire educational future. Sometimes the burden reveals itself to be the blessing that was lost through character failures that seemed convenient at the time but proved to be the most expensive mistakes of a lifetime. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.